Stop the insanity. Get focused on what really matters in life. Your faith, your family, your finances, and your future. Now sit back and change the trajectory of your life. This is Money for Life, brought to you by the 100-Year Savings Solution. Are you concerned about the markets? Stop taking unnecessary risks with your money while also getting great benefits. Visit us at 100yearsavings.com. Now, let's welcome your Money for Life hosts, Teresa Kuhn and Rick Sapio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Money for Life. Wow, this is an interesting topic given the times. Faith, abundance, and gratitude versus fear, scarcity, and resentment. You know, every day when we get up in the morning, we have a choice that day to choose what kind of day we want to have. And unfortunately, I'm seeing so many people unconsciously choosing fear, scarcity, and resentment. Almost like, you know, they say in the news industry, blood sells, fear sells. And so they keep blasting us with fear. And what do? We keep consuming more news and consuming more social media. So you and I'm not sure how this happened, but we're not, we're not consumers of media in the traditional sense. So faith, abundance, and gratitude. Teresa, I believe that you occupy that realm or that way of being and that way of thinking, no matter what's going on around you. Even when you're stressed out of your mind and I'm breaking your chops. I rarely see you in fear, scarcity, and resentment, but what can we communicate to the world on this podcast to have them see the difference between these big extremes? And you told me a quote when we were preparing, which I love. Resentment is like preparing a poison for someone else, but drinking it yourself and waiting for the other person to die. Resentment eats at you and me. It eats at us. Wow. So let me just ask you a direct question. What can we do or say to get people to realize that they have choice in a matter? And what can they do about it?
I appreciate that observation. And it's probably taken me a long time to get to that point. I remember when I was in high school and college, I was very, very sarcastic. And I love sarcasm, but I think sometimes when people are overly sarcastic, it's because they're trying to hide or repress certain anger and certain emotions. And I've certainly worked through that. But, if you're listening to this podcast, you've already won the lottery. You've won the lottery big time. You're probably living in the United States of America, which has given more people more opportunities than any other country in the world as we know it. And yes, you could probably argue that, but why do so many people all around the world want to come here? There's a reason for that. There's a reason why so many people want to come to this country. And my parents raised me from a perspective of understanding that we have so much more than so many other people. And if you're constantly judging yourself from the perspective of how little you have or how somebody else has more, you're going to live in resentment. So we traveled around the world, and my parents would always point out, the poverty that was there and how little people had in terms of opportunity. Not so much that they're not happy because they're poor, but, lack of water, lack of food, lack of transportation, lack of the things that we take so for granted. So if you're consuming news and you're consuming media from the traditional perspective, you're right, Rick, blood sells, bad news sells. And they know from a psychological perspective, if they trigger our reptilian brain, it sucks us in. And that's where they want us. They want us to be a consumer of the bad news, and they want us living in fear because you can control a fearful population. It's a little bit more difficult to control. And by control, that can mean a lot of different things, but let's say influence someone who's in gratitude, someone who's in abundance. They're not thinking so much about what they don't have. They're not thinking about how I can upgrade my car to compete with other people. They're not thinking about how they're lacking in themselves and need something outside of themselves to fulfill themselves, right? They're operating on a different level. So it's very, very powerful. And I love the faith, abundance, and gratitude versus fear, scarcity, and resentment. So I love those two analogies. It's beautiful.
Observing people around the world and the United States, I've noticed that the people that have the most generally appreciate it the least. And I recall a time 10 years ago when I went to Soweto. It's supposedly the biggest slum on planet Earth. I have not looked this up, but I believe 10 million people live in squalor in cardboard boxes. There's no bathrooms. It's the most horrible thing I've ever seen. And I walked through it with a group of people. It's in South Africa. And it was unbelievable to see how appreciative the people were that we were just walking through their neighborhood. There was big smiles, there was zero complaining, and these people had nothing. People just couldn't be happier. And I think what happens is once they see what they could possibly have, then they want to see how they can get it. And there's two ways to get things in life. You could work for them. And if you're not willing to work for them, you can scheme and connive and be resentful. And that's where the bifurcation happens. I think if you study philosophy, most philosophers at some point start philosophizing about the concept of know thyself. And it goes all the way back to the Bible. Know thyself. Once you know yourself, you'll know what you're willing to work for, and you'll know what you're not willing to work for. And it's the people who haven't really done the work to know thyself, to peel the onion, to really understand what is it that they're here to do on this earth. And then all the resentment goes away. Because when you're living a life in alignment with your purpose and your values, all that crap goes away. And I heard a quote, I don't know when this point occurred for me, but here's the quote. Success in life is the point at which you realize that under no circumstances would you want to trade yourself for someone else. Success in life happens when you reach a point in your life where you just don't want to be somebody else. I could give a crap about being somebody else. I just want to be the best version of me. And I feel like all of this stuff that we see in the world today, all this misery, all this fear, all this toxic behavior is because we collectively, individually, but collectively have not chosen who we are in this moment. We want to be somebody else. We want to have something else. We want to do something else. Nothing's good enough for us. And I don't know where we lead. This podcast is unique from the perspective that we don't have answers. We're really just posing a way of thinking and a philosophy that hopefully you adopt and you pass this message on to others. If you know other people that need to hear this, uh, just know if you're listening, the action from this podcast is really decide what you want to be. When you get up in the morning, what do you want to be? Do you want to be someone who has immense gratitude for being alive and waking up another day? Someone who has faith that their future is going to be bigger than their past? Someone who sees an abundant world because there's so much abundance around? Or do you want the opposite? Do you want to live in fear? Do you want to resent things and people? And do you want to have a scarcity mindset? Like just everything's about scarcity. And scarcity is one of those things, as you know, for me, is when people are like cheap and scarce, I just bolt. There's so much abundance around. Why do we have to be cheap and scarce about anything?
You know, it's interesting. There's that saying that is, would you ever trade your problems for somebody else's problems? And when you come down to it, the problem is better than the devil you don't know. So I can't think of anybody's problems that I would trade with mine. The other day I was doing some surfing online and I ran across, I don't know what it was. It was a recording of a Zoom video with 16 celebrities, very, very famous celebrities. And so I clicked on it, probably clickbait, right? Sucked me right in, just like the Social Dilemma talks about. And I'm watching these 16 favorite celebrities for a few moments. And these were all beautiful people at one point in time, but boy, have they aged so terribly. And it seemed to me how they've just, their faces, their experiences, probably their addictions, their lifestyles, just on their face. Doesn't matter at some point what plastic surgery you get, what Botox you get, what fillers you get, who you've been most of your life in terms of health and how you've lived your life does come through. Like you can't stop that with fillers or plastic surgery. And it came up for me. I was thinking how many people would love to be these people, right? Especially when they were younger and beautiful. And look at them today. Look at Van Halen, who just passed away at the age of 65 and had been addicted to alcohol since he was the age of 12. And for so long struggled with a horrific cancer. We are born into who we are for a reason. We are not our bodies. We are not our emotions. We are not our feelings. We are not our thoughts. We are a soul having a physical experience. Nurture that soul. Get to know that soul. Come from a place of gratitude. And even if you're so depressed and so upset and can't see past the next minute, take it minute by minute and try focusing on gratitude and breathe from your heart. Everything that there's so many studies that have been done about heart-centered breathing. If you're having a panic attack or if you're, depressed or unconsolable, going to your heart and coming from a place of love, you can't feel fear. And so just that feeling of gratitude for whatever experience you're having, even if it's a terrible experience. Rick, those are just comments that I have to the conversation today that I think has helped me in my life.
Well, thank you for that, Teresa. We hope that this podcast had you think differently about how you approach your day and your life, and what message do you want to spread in the world. Teresa mentioned faith and spirituality. She didn't enumerate that, but if you think about this concept, like who are you as a human being? It's been scientifically proven that the cells in your body change out over time. So 15 years ago, there's not a single cell, from what I'm told, that is you from 15 years ago. So that means every single cell in your body has been completely reborn and rebirthed and is a different you, so to speak. So if it's a different you from 15 years ago, who are you? So no matter where you are spiritually or religiously, there's an essence outside of your physical cell structure. And that essence is the beautiful part of humanity that can embrace faith, abundance, and gratitude. And you almost have to shun the other side, the darker side of humanity, if you really want to have a fulfilling life, which is really what Teresa and I are aiming for on these podcasts. Thanks again for listening to another episode of Money for Life.
You have just experienced the Money for Life podcast, brought to you by the 100-Year Savings Solution. Implement these strategies today and create a life by design. For more information, visit 100yearsavings.com. Have a blessed day.